There's a weird glitch for free views online these days, and the method may be more unconventional than you think. Limbus Company is a gacha game that I've played for some time, and over the years, I've noticed an unusual trend. Most content that covers it gets an abnormally high amount of engagement versus other indie games of similar standing. If you're a small streamer, just react to Limbus's story. If you're a musician, just make a cover of a song from the game. If you're a loremonger or guide maker, well, you might as well be a kid at a candy store if you cover Limbus. If you're an online content creator of any size making content on the game, then it's very likely that it will perform extremely well. It's one of the weirdest phenomena I've seen, and I have no real way of explaining why this is the case, but I do have a few working theories. My name is Psyche, and in my opinion, Limbus Company is one of the biggest outliers in the world of gacha games, and it has certain qualities to it that's unseen in virtually any other game. So what makes the game unique, and how the hell does content related to it online always get so many views? To get something out of the way, Limbus Company, in my opinion, is an anomaly in this genre of mobile games. No matter how you spin it, it's still considered a gacha game, meaning that it technically puts it in the same ballpark as titles like these. However, because it's in the same niche, it ends up looking way better than the competition in comparison. To this day, there isn't actually a real direct rival to Limbus Company. What I mean by this is in two ways. First, there's not actually many gacha game settings that match the dark and gritty tone of Limbus. Okay, maybe there's a few of them out there, but everyone knows the glaze doesn't stop, so they don't count. While this kind of darker style of writing is not exactly uncommon in the greater visual novel medium overall, it is unique among gacha games. The game also does virtually zero marketing outside the trailers it uploads on its own channel, and its natural growth of its player base should be something that other developers can learn from. The second way Limbus differs is that you physically can't whale in this game. The point of gacha systems is to obscure the true cost of certain items like characters or gear, while making the spending ceiling high to capture some valuable whales. I personally cannot see an argument how putting gacha systems in a video game enhances it in any way, and the best gacha games are the ones that minimize the negative impacts of the gacha being attached to the game. People can say that a gacha game is so good that it's a video game first, gacha game second. The problem I have with this statement is that it's essentially a self-admission that the gacha portion of the game drags down the experience, and it would just be better if it was taken out of the equation altogether. It gets rather ironic when the developers don't give out a lot of free pulls during an anniversary and players throw a pissy fit. If you truly value a gacha game as a video game first, then you wouldn't really care how many free pulls are given out, since you will be more focused on the additions that every new content patch brings instead. The conclusion I can draw from this is that people literally play gacha games because they simply like pulling on the virtual slot machine. The thing is that you can just bypass the gacha entirely by grinding in this game, and you can't pull more copies of a character anyways. No one does this because it runs contrary to what gacha games are trying to achieve. Monetizing a game through gacha mechanics is a conscious choice that a developer makes, and the goal is to make the power ceiling for certain characters and gear high so you capture those whales, while hiding the true cost of pulling for said characters through RNG. In my book, all gacha mechanics involving real money are predatory. Period. In all honesty, I think if a developer truly wants to pour their heart and passion into making a video game as fun as it can be, then they wouldn't make a gacha game. I have heard that Limbus wasn't originally going to be a gacha, but they probably saw the massive potential of the mobile gacha gaming market and wanted to dip their toes in it. You also see a little bit of FOMO elements with the while purchase night events, how you can only get these units when the event is up. They know that fear of missing out works well in a gacha game. I can understand that, you know? Although, what I am trying to get at is that Limbus manages to minimize the predatory effects of its gacha portion, which ironically makes it a good gacha game as a result. It occupies a very unique spot in this niche that no one else has been able to achieve. Something to keep in mind is that purely by its metrics, Project Moon games can still be considered indie games. Yet the amount of traction on its community forums are way beyond that of an indie level. On average, a majority of a media's fans doesn't actually interact with things that's not the media itself. If you take a look at Genshin Impact, for example, a large chunk of people aren't following the news on forums. In Discord or Reddit groups talking about the game will really keep track of which gacha banner is coming up next. They simply play the game and that's it. Only a small portion of its players bother looking up YouTube content, theory crafting sites, or discussion forums with other people. I believe that players that follow Project Moon Media may not have mainstream numbers, but they're more likely to seek out content adjacent to the game itself. I have no real explanation as to what causes Limbus Company to have a loyal following, but my biggest guess would be its story. The game's structure is inspired by the Italian poet Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, which is split into 3 parts: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Effectively, Hell, Purgatory, and Heaven. Each part consists of 33 chapters that the poem calls cantos, totaling 100 if you count the introduction canto. Each of the sinners are also based on their own literary works from varying cultures, with their respective arcs also loosely based on the same narrative. Now, I find it hard to believe that there would be 100 chapters of Limbus Company, but it goes to show the amount of thought put into the world building. To be fair, plenty of gacha games create characters based on real-life historical records, though I just want to add that due to how the roster of the game is set up, there can't be more than the existing 12 characters. Instead of feeling like cool references, that's mostly a one-time gimmick. The characters that are based on said literary works are there with you permanently throughout the entire story. Character development is unfortunately something that's mostly absent from gacha game stories, due to something I call the gacha motive of storytelling. Characters are mostly marketed once for their relevance in the main event, then thrown to the side to make way for the next set of characters when the following update hits. Limbus creates new identities of the same 12 characters, meaning that they're betting a lot of their writing skills to carry the game on this cast alone. To be fair again, Limbus is not the only gacha game that does this. Plenty of female-oriented gachas only have a handful of male leads, with a gacha featuring different variants of them. There's also Heaven Burns Red, which does the same thing, and in my opinion, the story can sometimes compete with that of Limbus. A combination of all of this is what leads people to feel more connected to this game than other gacha titles. To my knowledge, this has actually always been the case for Project Moon games, and while their games were niche, they've always had a cult following. So Limbus Company releasing was always going to have an established fanbase around it immediately.
So you were always like this?
Although, I do think there are times where the extreme loyalty of the fanbase can be a hindrance to Project Moon trying new things. For example, when they nerf the occasional characters or story stages, there's gonna be people that would oppose the changes. As seasoned developers in the industry at this point, I trust that Project Moon has the research and background to ensure everything within the game runs smoothly. So if certain adjustments are needed to characters or story stages, I wouldn't have a problem. To be fair, once again, the subject of difficulty always drums up polarization from players whenever it's done to a game, even outside of gachas. You can even argue somewhat the same way due to the direction the story is taking. Before I completed Canto 9, I predicted in my mind that near the end of the chapter, Dante would have a light bulb moment, unlocking a new ability without pretext, and the conclusion would contain a boss fight with a melee song. What if, hear me out, one of the future cantos doesn't have Millie as the vocalist and uses someone else instead? How would people react? Well, I for one would love this. I'm not saying that Millie is a bad artist or get rid of her entirely. I'm just saying that as someone that values story and artistic expression deeply in a gacha game, what a way to break the usual routine and truly surprise everyone. Millie originally started out as a fairly niche artist that composed for rhythm games like Demo, but these days, the name is so synonymous with anything related to Project Moon that even her independent songs will have sleeper agents rating it. So what I'm proposing is, you break the cycle. Use literally any other artist for a change. I'm very curious to see what will happen if they actually do this. You can see that due to how every recent chapter has played out so far, I can make a few vague predictions about how the next big story plot points will turn out. I personally rank Limbus in the top 3 best story in gacha games, And this is generally not a critique I will make to any gacha, as I hold Limbus' story in high regards. But I'm just saying that I would be welcome to any changes to the story structure that makes it less formulaic. Now, let me be clear about something though. Just because you slap the words Limbus Company on a video title doesn't mean you'll get free views. And this transitions to one of the nuances of this trend. I believe that due to the community's dedication and willingness to engage with each other, it creates a scenario that due to people knowing that putting work into creating Limbus content gets rewarded, it invites high-quality content from creators. What I'm saying is that if you're a person that has some degree of skill making a well-researched and well-presented video, you're going to flourish in the Limbus community. If you're just an average Joe posting random uncut gameplay footage from the game, it's probably not going to work. From a content creation perspective, when you're an up-and-coming creator trying to grow your platform, you run into problems whether a game you're covering is too big or too small for its own liking. For example, you may play a very niche gacha game that you wished got more attention. I mean, it would be so cool if a huge content creator came in and started making guides for it or something. See, the problem here is that the large content creators know how to make well-informed and entertaining videos, and they know what kind of videos work. But there's a great risk in covering an extremely small game, as the audience for it is just not very big, which can be quite a gamble if content creation is their full-time job. So it means that people who make content for very small games are likely to be amateurish in editing or presentation, but they do this out of pure passion for the game. On the other hand, if I wanted to know how to play a character in Genshin Impact, well, there's gonna be tens if not hundreds of video results competing for my eyeballs. This playground is just too crowded, so online creators may purposefully choose not to make content on huge games because the chances of success is also not high due to competition. Limbus Company, though, is a sweet middle ground. I personally know a handful of Limbus Company creators, and all of them seem to have unique voices to contribute. If it's a guide, it's pretty damn thorough on how to play a certain unit. If it's a lore video, then it tends to be thoughtful and well presented. If it's just random stuff, then it's still pretty entertaining. The most interesting part is that the majority of them don't have those trademark clickbaity titles and thumbnails commonly seen in, well, other gacha content. Again, I think this is due to how Limbus has no real competition and doesn't need to bother with things such as gacha tribalism. The game doesn't need to prove itself against others since it already knows it's better, and I'm not even being sarcastic about that. The conclusion I can draw is that if you're a somewhat skilled content creator, you know that making content on Limbus Company is a safe investment to explore your creative avenue however you see fit, since it's very likely that the content will perform well, such as this video. So, despite the game technically considered indie, there is a great market for Limbus Company content for creators of any size, and you will be rewarded for putting quality into your craft. Although, I have no doubt that there will be some survivorship bias with the theory I'm proposing. After all, if you really search hard enough online, you'll probably find plenty of low-effort Limbus videos with virtually zero viewership, and that it's likely that only high-quality content gets recommended and succeed. I think this is a possibility, but due to the trends I've noticed, it's that if you are able to have a decent microphone for commentary, a decent editing rig, and decently presented ideas, you can expect some of the most consistent and steady growth on this platform. Another reason I think Limbus content tends to get high viewership may sound a bit uncomfortable to some fans, and it's that there's simply not a lot of rotating content in the game, so people just get their fix on Limbus content outside of it. Let's face it, there really isn't that much new stuff released in a predictable schedule. Genshin has brought the 6-week patch cycle expectation, so in today's day and age, significant new content is expected every month or so. There's obviously no concrete rule that a game must do this in order to survive, but the constant raising bar for consistent quality has made it so that you want to deliver those updates in that time frame, and Genshin has more or less set the trend to have this expectation. If there's no new stuff being added to the game after a while, then it would be natural to assume that the company behind it isn't doing too well, which may signal some players to stop spending in fear that the game may shut down. I used to have this as a metric when I first started reviewing games, but now I'm more lax on it. I mean, if however the game is running itself manages to stay afloat, then I really can't say they're doing anything wrong. Limbus, on the other hand, just kinda releases things at its own pace. Now, I normally play this once a week for the mirror dungeon run, as after you beat the railways, there isn't much else to do. It's not like there's rotating late game modes every few weeks like most other gacha games. In theory, this would be a critique I can make for the game, and I think I even mentioned something similar when I first reviewed it years ago. However, if the game is able to chug along fine without any real danger to its integrity, then I guess I can turn a blind eye. There's a few gacha games that I describe to be anomalies that thrive despite not following conventional gacha norms. Aside from Limbus, I would say Fate Grand Order is also another one, where the Fate IP and its deeply enfranchised fans will continue to carry the game, and it can get away with dead periods where there's a content drought. As I've mentioned before though, just because there's not enough content to engage with in the game, the player base still has a high tendency to want to interact with the thing they like, so they naturally look elsewhere. This leads to a high percentage of players wanting more Limbus Company content but cannot get it within the game, and this is where online media come into play. Ironically, the low frequency in which the game is updated, alongside the dedication of its core fanbase, has created a scenario in which the market for Limbus content online is massive. Now, to be clear, none of this is backed up by concrete evidence, so just take it as my little gacha game theory. Anyways though, let me know what you think, and let's see if this video somehow proves my point. For more content on gacha games, subscribe to the channel. I hope to slowly phase out sponsorships in place for Patreon support, so you can pitch in for $2 a month. As always, thank you for watching, be sure to spend moderately, and have fun out there.